The morning sun was just starting to paint the ridiculously manicured lawns of Harmony Heights a sickly sweet shade of green. Harmony Heights. The name itself was enough to make you gag, especially when you knew the kind of petty tyranny that lurked beneath its perfectly trimmed hedges. Ethan, was halfway through my first cup of coffee, a dark, bitter brew that was the only thing keeping me from crawling back into bed, when a knock came. We weren't expecting anyone, and in this neighborhood, unexpected knocks were rarely a prelude to anything good. It was usually a misplaced Amazon package, a lost dog, always a ridiculously small, yappy breed, or, God forbid, HOA Karen Marlene Pierce. I set my mug down with a sigh, the ceramic clinking against the countertop. Marlene Pierce, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, was a woman whose veins probably pumped pure, undiluted vinegar. I stretched, cracking my knuckles, already bracing myself for whatever fresh hell she was about to unleash. Swinging open the door, I found my suspicions confirmed. There she stood, clutching a clipboard to her chest like it contained the launch codes for nuclear war. Her lips were pursed so tightly they almost disappeared, a sure sign she just finished sucking on a lemon, or more likely, reviewing the HOA bylaws. "We need to talk," she said, her voice dripping with that artificial politeness that made your teeth ache. I leaned against the doorframe, trying to project an air of casual indifference, even though my insides were already churning. "Marlene," I said, managing a weary smile, "it's barely past 7. It's too early for whatever this is." She ignored me, naturally. Marlene Pierce was a force of nature, and pleasantries were merely obstacles to be bulldozed. She thrust a folded piece of paper into my hand. "Your brother's in violation of our HOA guidelines," she declared, her voice rising slightly. "If this continues, there will be consequences." That word, consequences, hung in the air, heavy and ominous, like a poorly aimed threat from a low-budget supervillain. I unfolded the note, a knot forming in my gut. Typed in that sterile, official-looking font the HOA loved, it read, "Mr. Luke Sullivan has been observed placing non-approved items in his yard, specifically a military surplus crate, disrupting the uniformity of the community." I blinked, then laughed short and sharp. "Seriously?" Marlene stood there, her red blazer blazing in the morning light, blonde hair cropped short like a battle helmet. "It's not funny, Ethan. That crate is an eyesore. It doesn't belong here." I rubbed my temples, still chuckling. "You're telling me my brother, who just got back from overseas, can't keep a crate in his own yard? What's next, banning his boots?" Her nose twitched, like I'd struck a nerve. "It's about maintaining standards. HOA policy requires all exterior items to be approved." I took a slow breath, keeping my cool. Inside, Luke was probably still in the garage, sorting through the gear he'd brought home. That crate, weathered olive green, was a piece of his life, not some random junk. "Marlene," I said, "do you even know what that thing means to him?" "I don't care what it is," she snapped, eyes narrowing. "Rules are rules." I shook my head, grinning despite myself. She didn't get it. Luke wasn't just anyone. I turned back inside, still laughing darkly, and found him in the kitchen, sipping coffee. He was in a faded t-shirt and jeans, the crate visible through the window, tucked by the porch. "You're not going to believe this," I said, handing him the letter. He scanned it, his face calm at first. Then a slow, sly grin spread across his lips. "They've got a problem with my crate?" he asked, glancing out at it. "Yeah," I said, leaning against the counter. "It's disrupting the uniformity." Luke set the paper down, took a sip, and stared out the window for a moment. "Huh. Well, if they don't like one crate, they're going to love what's next." I raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" He turned to me, eyes glinting with a spark I hadn't seen since he got back. "I'm turning the yard into a gallery. That crate's just the start. Wait till they see the camo." I paused, then grinned. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said, setting his mug down. "Marlene wants uniformity? I'll give her something to look at." I can already picture it. Luke dragging out his old rucksack, maybe even hanging his camo jacket like a flag. Whatever grudge Marlene had, she just lit a match under the wrong guy. Harmony Heights was about to get a lesson in creative rebellion. The next morning, Harmony Heights woke up to its usual polished glow. Lawns so neat they looked fake, sprinklers hissing like clockwork. I was on my second cup of coffee, still savoring the bitter kick, when I heard a faint clatter from the front yard. Curious, I wandered to the window and nearly spat out my drink. Luke was out there, hauling that olive green crate into the middle of the grass. But it wasn't just a crate anymore. He propped it open, and inside was a tangle of gear, a rucksack, a canteen, and there it was, his camo jacket, draped over the edge like a flag catching the breeze. I stepped onto the porch, mug in hand, as he hammered a small wooden sign into the ground next to it. Scrawled in black marker, it read, "Exhibit A, Soldier's Life." I grinned, shaking my head. You weren't kidding about the gallery. Luke straightened up, wiping his hands on his jeans, a satisfied smirk on his face. Nope. If Marlene wants to nitpick my crate, she's getting the full show. By noon, the gallery had grown. He dragged out an old folding cot, standard military issue, and set it up beside the crate, a pair of scuffed boots tucked underneath. A rusted helmet sat on the grass, tilted like it was posing for a photo. The camo jacket stayed front and center, its faded greens and browns a quiet rebellion against the neighborhood's beige perfection. I watched from the steps as he worked, moving with the same calm focus I'd seen him use on tougher days overseas. Then came Marlene. She rolled up like a storm cloud, waddling across the street in her red t-shirt and black skirt, her blonde hair bouncing with every furious step. Her belly pushed against the fabric, swaying as she planted herself at the edge of our yard, hands on hips. "What is this nonsense?" she barked, her voice sharp enough to slice through the morning quiet. Luke turned, casual as ever, and gestured to his setup. "It's art, Marlene. Thought I'd share a little history with the neighborhood." Her face flushed, a vein pulsing at her temple. "This isn't art. It's a junkyard. That crate was bad enough, but this..." She jabbed a finger at the camo jacket, her nose wrinkling like it smelled worse than the trash bins on pickup day. "It's an eyesore." I stepped forward, leaning against the porch railing. "It's on our property, Marlene. Last I checked, you don't get to dictate what we do here." She spun on me, eyes narrowing. "It's visible from the street, Ethan. It disrupts the community's aesthetic. HOA rules say." "HOA rules say a lot of things," Luke cut in, folding his arms. "But I'm not breaking any. No structures, no permanent fixtures, just a display. Call it free expression." Marlene's mouth opened, then snapped shut like a fish gasping for air. She glared at the camo jacket again, her lips twitching. "This is an escalation," she finally spat, pulling out her phone. "I'm documenting this. Expect a formal complaint." Luke nodded, all mock seriousness. "Make sure you get the helmet too. It's got character." He tossed her a lazy salute, and I swear I saw steam coming out of her ears. She stormed off, her heels digging into the pavement, muttering something about standards as she typed furiously on her phone. I turned to Luke, grinning. "You're poking a bear with a stick." "Good," he said, adjusting the cot so it faced her house. "Bears need exercise." By afternoon, the neighborhood was buzzing. Mrs. Henderson peeked over her fence, water ink and forgotten, a smile tugging at her lips. A couple kids on bikes slowed down, pointing and whispering. Mr. Peterson, usually glued to his paper, stood on his porch, coffee in hand, watching with a mix of confusion and amusement. Luke's gallery wasn't just a jab at Marlene. It was turning into a spectacle. He stepped back, hands on his hips, surveying his work. "What do you think?" he asked, glancing my way. I took a sip of coffee, still warm in my mug. "I think Marlene's gonna lose it when she figures out this is just the beginning." His smirk widened. "Oh, she hasn't seen nothing yet. That camo's got a story, and she's gonna hear it loud and clear." I raised an eyebrow, but he just grabbed a beer from the cooler by the door and cracked it open, the hiss cutting through the quiet. Marlene thought she'd won with her rules, but Luke was playing a different game, one she didn't even know the rules to. And that camo jacket? It was more than a prop. Something told me it was the key to why she was so wound up, and we were about to find out. The sun was climbing higher over Harmony Heights, casting sharp shadows across Luke's growing gallery in the front yard. By mid-morning, it wasn't just a crate and a cot anymore. He'd added a rusted ammo box, propped open to show a stack of old field manuals, and a pair of binoculars hanging from a nail in the crate. The camo jacket still held court, swaying slightly in the breeze, its faded patches catching the light. Luke stood back, hands on his hips, tweaking the setup like an artist perfecting a canvas. I watched from the porch, coffee long gone, replaced by a cold soda fizzing in my hand. "Think she'll send the cavalry?" I asked, nodding toward Marlene's house across the street. Her curtains had been twitching all morning, subtle, but not subtle enough. Luke grinned, adjusting the binoculars so they glinted in her direction. "Let her. I've got more where this came from." He wasn't kidding. An hour later, he hauled out a rolled-up sleeping bag, military green, of course, and unfurled it across the cot, letting it drape just enough to look casual but deliberate. A battered canteen joined the mix, perched on the ammo box like a museum piece. The yard was starting to look like a snapshot of his old base camp, minus the sand and gunfire. Every piece was placed with care, a quiet middle finger to Marlene's clipboard empire. Then she appeared. Marlene waddled out her front door, her red t-shirt stretched tight over her belly, black skirt swishing as she marched toward us. That short blonde hair bobbed with every step, and her face was a storm of fury. Cheeks puffed, eyes narrowed to slits. She stopped at the curb, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "This has gone far enough," she snapped, her voice slicing through the hum of a distant lawnmower. Luke turned, wiping his hands on his jeans, calm as ever. "Morning, Marlene. Like the new additions?" She jabbed a finger at the sleeping bag. "This is a disgrace. You're turning this place into a dump, piling up junk like some hoarder." Her gaze flicked to the camo jacket, and her lips twitched, a flicker of something deeper than annoyance crossing her face. "It's unacceptable." I stepped off the porch, soda is still in hand. "It's not junk, it's his stuff, and it's on our land. What's your problem with it?" "My problem?" She shot back, her belly quivering as she took a step closer. "It's an assault on this community's standards. That thing," she pointed to the camo jacket, her hand trembling slightly. "It doesn't belong here." Luke tilted his head, studying her like she'd just given him a puzzle to solve. "What's wrong with the jacket, Marlene? It's just fabric." Her jaw tightened, and for a second, she looked like she might actually answer. But then she huffed, spinning back to her phone, fingers flying across the screen. "You'll hear from the board. This isn't over." She stormed off, her heels clacking a furious rhythm, leaving a trail of tension in the air. I glanced at Luke, raising an eyebrow. "She's got a real thing about that jacket." "What's that about?" He shrugged, but his eyes stayed on her retreating figure. "Dunno yet, but I'll bet it's personal." The neighborhood couldn't look away now. Mrs. Henderson wandered over, her watering can dangling forgotten, a grin breaking through her usual frown. "Never thought I'd see a soldier's camp in Harmony Heights," she said, nodding at the setup. "Good for you, Luke." A couple kids rode by on bikes, slowing to gawk, one whispering, "That's so cool." Mr. Peterson lingered on his porch, sipping coffee, his usual scowl replaced by a faint smirk. Word was spreading. Luke's gallery wasn't just a jab at Marlene. It was a quiet uprising, and people were picking sides. By afternoon, a new piece joined the display. A folded tarp, camo-patterned, stretched out like a banner behind the cot. Luke stepped back, cracking open a beer from the cooler. "What do you think?" he asked, taking a sip. I laughed, the soda can cold against my palm. "I think Marlene's going to blow a gasket. You're turning this into a full-on exhibit." "That's the plan," he said, his smirk widening. "She wants to control everything. Let's see how she handles a little chaos." I leaned against the railing, watching the tarp ripple in the wind. Marlene's reaction to the camo jacket stuck with me. There was something there, something raw she wasn't saying. Luke was onto it too, and he wasn't letting up. This wasn't just about a crate anymore. It was a game of push and pull, and Harmony Heights was the battlefield. The afternoon sun hung heavy over Harmony Heights, baking the lawns into a glossy sheen. Luke's gallery had taken on a life of its own. The crate now flanked by the cot, the tarp stretched taut like a camo canopy, and that jacket still front and center, its ruffled edges dancing in the breeze. He'd added a final touch that morning. A small metal flagpole, sunk into the grass, with a faded unit patch fluttering at the top. I stood on the porch, a beer in hand, watching him tweak the setup with a grin that said he knew exactly what he was doing. "Think she'll send a lawyer this time?" I asked, leaning against the railing. Luke chuckled, adjusting the flagpole. "She could try. This is still my yard." He spoke too soon. Across the street, Marlene's front door slammed open with a bang that echoed like a gunshot. She stormed out, her red t-shirt clinging to her sweaty bulk, black skirt swishing violently as she charged toward us. That short blonde hair was a mess, sticking to her forehead, and her belly jiggled with every furious step. She didn't stop at the curb this time. She barreled right onto our grass, her face a twisted mask of rage. "This is insanity," she bellowed, her voice cracking. "You think you can mock me with this garbage?" She waved a meaty hand at the tarp, then froze, her eyes locking on the camo jacket. "And that, get out of my sight." Luke turned, hand in his pockets, cool as ever. "It's not your sight to control, Marlene. What's your deal?" "My deal?" she sputtered, her belly quivering as she stepped closer. "My deal is you turning this place into a war zone. It's hideous, all of it." She started pacing, muttering under her breath, loud enough for us to hear. "Should have known. Always the same. Ruining everything. Can't stand it. Disgusting camo." I set my beer down, stepping forward. "Hey, back off. This is our property. You don't get to—" She cut me off, spinning toward the crate. "Oh, I'll back off when this junk's gone." Before I could blink, she grabbed the canteen off the ammo box and hurled it at the cot. It bounced off with a dull clang, landing in the grass. Then she lunged for the tarp, yanking at it like a wild animal, muttering nonstop. "Trash, just like him. Always the same. Ruins everything." Luke moved fast, stepping between her and the setup. "Marlene, stop it. Now." She didn't. Her hands found the camo jacket, and she ripped it off the crate, clutching it like it personally offended her. This filth," she snarled, shaking in his face. "You think this is funny? You think you can shove it in my face?" Her voice broke, a mix of fury and something raw, and she threw the jacket to the ground, stomping on it with her heel. "Not here, not again." I froze, stunned. Luke's jaw tightened, but he didn't yell, just bent down, picked up the jacket, and brushed it off. "That's enough," he said, low and steady, his eyes locked on her. "You don't touch my stuff." Marlene stood there, panting, her face blotchy and red. "You'll regret this," she hissed, still muttering as she backed off. "Should have stayed gone. Ruins everything. Always does." She stumbled back to her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. What the hell was that? Luke smoothed the jacket, hanging it back on the crate. "She's cracking. That's what." The neighborhood had seen it all. Mrs. Henderson peeked over her fence, wide-eyed, her watering can dripping onto her shoes. The kids on bikes circled back, whispering furiously. Mr. Peterson stepped off his porch, coffee forgotten, shaking his head like he'd just watched a train wreck. Luke's gallery wasn't just a display anymore. It was a full-on war zone, and Marlene had just drawn blood. I grabbed my beer again, the cold glass grounding me. "She trashed your stuff, man. What now?" Luke looked at the scuff marks on the jacket, then at her house. "Now, I rebuild it bigger. She wants to hate this camo. I'll give her a reason to." I raised an eyebrow, but he just cracked a fresh beer, the hiss sharp in the quiet. Marlene's meltdown wasn't random. Something about that jacket had set her off, and I had a feeling we were close to finding out why. She crossed a line, but Luke wasn't backing down. This was personal now. The next morning in Harmony Heights felt different, quieter, like the air was holding its breath after Marlene's meltdown. Luke's gallery stood battered but proud. The crate scuffed, the tarp torn at one corner, the camo jacket back in place, a little dirtier but still defiant. He was out there early, hammering a new sign into the grass. Exhibit B, Resilience. I watched from the porch, a fresh coffee steaming in my hand, as he worked with that same steady focus. "She went nuts yesterday," I said, nodding toward Marlene's house. The curtains were still, no sign of her yet. "You sure you want to keep this up?" Luke straightened, brushing dirt off his jeans. She started it. I'm just finishing it. But finishing it took a turn none of us saw coming. Around noon, Marlene emerged, waddling across the street in her red t-shirt and black skirt, her belly swaying with every step. That short blonde hair was plastered with sweat, and her face wasn't furious this time, just tired, almost broken. She stopped at the edge of the yard, clutching a crumpled envelope, her eyes fixed on the camo jacket. "I need to say something," she muttered, her voice low, barely audible over the hum of a sprinkler down the block. Luke set down the hammer he'd been using, folding his arms. "Go ahead." She took a shaky breath, her fingers tightening on the envelope. "That jacket, it's not just junk to me. It's him." She paused, her lips trembling. "My dad wore one just like it. Left us, me and Mom, when I was 5. Went off to war, never came back. Didn't even write. Mom cried herself sick waiting, and her voice cracked. I hated him. Hated that damn camo. Every time I see it, it's like he's laughing at me." I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. Luke didn't move, but his eyes softened, the hard edge fading. "Marlene," he said quietly. "I didn't know." She huffed a bitter laugh. "Yeah, well, I didn't exactly advertise it. After he left, everything fell apart. Mom drank, we lost the house. I swore I'd never let chaos win again. That's why she gestured vaguely at the neighborhood. "That's why I'm like this. Order's all I've got." Luke glanced at the jacket, then back at her. "This isn't him. It's just mine. I wore it through hell, yeah, but I came back. For my family." Marlene's shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. "I know. I saw it, and all came rushing back. I shouldn't have touched your stuff. I'm sorry." I set my mug down, stepping closer. "You trashed his gallery over a ghost." She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Stupid, right? But it's not stupid when it's all you've carried." Luke picked up the jacket, holding it out to her. "You want to see it up close?" "No ghosts here, just a guy who made it home." She hesitated, then took it, running her fingers over the worn fabric. Her face softened like a weight was lifting. "You're not like him," she said, almost to herself. "Nope," Luke replied, his voice gentle. "And you don't have to be like this either." What happened next was slow, but real. Luke didn't tear down the gallery. He rebuilt it, cleaner this time, with Marlene's help. She hauled over a folding chair, muttering about keeping it neat, and even dusted off the crate. The camo jacket stayed, but she didn't flinch anymore. Over the next few days, she stopped by with coffee, then a plate of cookies, lumpy but edible. Luke shared stories about his tours. Not the ugly stuff, just the small things, sunsets over camp, letters from home. She listened, her muttering replaced by quiet nods. One evening, I found them on the porch, Marlene in her red t-shirt, Luke in his jeans, laughing over some dumb joke about the HOA. "Guess we're neighbors now," she said, her belly jiggling as she chuckled. "Guess so," Luke replied, cracking a beer and handing her one. I grinned, leaning against the railing. The gallery stayed up, a little less wild, but it wasn't about rebellion anymore. It was a bridge. Marlene's reign of petty tyranny was over, not with a bang, but with a truce. Harmony Heights felt lighter, and that camo jacket? It wasn't a ghost. It was just a neighbor's story, finally heard. And that's how it ended. Folks, Marlene and Luke turning a war over camo into a porch-side truce. Harmony Heights got quieter, not because someone won, but because they listened. Turns out, behind every tyrant's clipboard might be a hurt worth understanding. Life's messy. Sometimes it's not about fighting back, but reaching out. That jacket wasn't just fabric. It was a lesson. We've all got ghosts, but we don't have to let them run the show. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. I hope it hit you as hard as it did me. If you love this story, smash that like button. It means the world to me. Drop a comment below. Ever had a neighbor like Marlene? Or a win like Luke's? Let's chat. I read everyone. See you next time.